Hey, what's going on, guys? Super quick weekly scan coming. I have a lot to cover, so I just want to get this out of the way here and just have you guys ready and prepared as much as possible. Basically, elections are out of the way, right? So we have that kind of that wrench in the equation out of the way for the most part. I think a lot of names that I'm going to be looking at are going to benefit greatly from the current administration or the new administration, if you will. And really just kind of looking to take pullbacks, right? I think the market might need a little bit of rest over the next 2 days, 3 days, maybe a week. And I think that kind of takes into that expiration coming up here on the 15th, which is this Friday. And then from there, I think we're going to start to see that slow trajectory up, right? Kind of leading into end of November. I think November or December is going to be a fantastic month. Obviously, we might have a small minor pullback, some consolidation that's totally healthy. I just don't think that we're going to have that fear of a big drop or that big drop per se. Um, and obviously, I think a lot of this plays out end of December, going into January, potentially even February, and then we'll kind of be out of it by then. But very simple here. Let's just start with Intel. Intel, very, very clean. We're trading into this gap here that leads up to 29. I've told you guys multiple times, I think this goes to 29.73, where that tax harvest will basically be a write-off for a lot of the big money. So I think we're going to easily trade back up to that. We broke through this low here at 24.59, but remember we basically had it as resistance here. We kind of consolidated above the earnings gap high, and then we broke out here. And let me get the volume really quickly. I switched to white colored charts. Oh God, where are they at? There we go. But yeah, we broke through on harmonic volume, and ideally we just get the pullback now on divergence, right? So some kind of pullback to retest this breakout would be fantastic. And I think I'm going to roll, as I currently have the June contracts, I closed half. Still have full shares, but if we can just pull back and hold, I want to roll into like January, February. This is still a really cheap stock, and especially from an options perspective, right? IV is very low. They're just really mispriced in my opinion still because of the beatdown it's taken. So if this can just pull back here, even the Februarys I think are very, very cheap. So I might do that, and obviously still target 29.05, which is this gap here, and that's pretty much that one. Nothing super crazy with that. Roku, I've had this drawn out for a little bit now. Remember, we kind of sold down more than I would have liked after I took shares up here, but this is now our footprint candle, and we can just kind of mark the low of that. I don't think this is going to break underneath that low, but with that being said, right, this is super simple now, where we can now use that earnings gap high as kind of like our support, where a lot of those orders are going to be to support price. I would just like to see this either pull back from its current close down to 68.75 or press up to fill the gap. Sellers hit that gap and obviously push it down, and we want to see a high tight flag or some kind of a divergence off of that high tight flag, ideally into the EMAs, and then I would lock that in there and try to get an entry off of that. So either way, I think this is both ways are going to be very, very clean here. If you guys haven't caught on to the theme that I've been talking about, right, Tesla and Coin are pretty much leading the market and are leading ARKK, just the ARK basket as a whole. But if you take a look at a lot of the other names, right, Zoom completely broke out, right? This is a big holding in ARKK. Hood, right, big breakout on Hood, okay? If we take a look at Tesla, obviously a big breakout on Tesla. We'll talk about this one in a second. Coin, massive breakout on Coin, right? So a lot of these names, and we'll talk about this one in a second too, I promise, but a lot of these names in ARKK absolutely going parabolic, right? But led by Coin, led by Tesla. The one that hasn't really done its thing is Roku, and I think Roku is obviously still primed. I've talked about this accumulation that's been happening for a while. We have this gap up here that has been, I wouldn't say necessarily entirely absorbed, but the absorption process has started. So if we can catch a lagger in a really hot basket or a really hot theme, especially with the new administration, I think a lot of these names are going to do extremely well. So really just a pullback off 68.75 or a high tight flag off of 76.08. I think this then can move up into 78.61 pretty easily, whether it rejects or it breaks through. But either way, just looking for it to base 78.61 eventually, and then ultimately trade up to this gap up here, right? I think it's at like 91 and some change, and then we'll be out of this trade. So I'm going to be looking for this as kind of like my secondary focus. Next would be Oxy, right? This kind of comes down to earnings. I did take some lottos here over the week, or on Friday, kind of over the weekend going into their earnings. But look how many gaps we have above. I know this isn't gray because I just switched out my colors, but yeah, gap up at 52.69, ends at 53.91. From there, we have another gap, 54.92 to 55.66. And this is really just giving us like a triple bottom type look here off of the daily, multiple attempts to get it below, but we keep closing back above. And if you guys have noticed, every single time that we've gotten near to the bottom or kind of swept the bottom, we've seen a high volume come in without a new low being made. And then when I took this, we had a really nice push off of that low and a nice close, I would say. I know this is obviously lower than the previous close, hence the black candle or the red candle, but good long wick that came in. Good volume defending that low, and then we obviously have earnings on Tuesday. So this is dependent on earnings, but if we can get some kind of pop on earnings, let's say we end up pushing up, I don't know, it's like 52.69, and we pull back. I'm looking to add into this. I took longer dated contracts for a reason. I'm not trying to hit a home run and just get a huge earnings lotto. I think that this name can really trend, and once again, I think oil is going to do really well in the Trump administration. And obviously, I believe Buffett's still been buying this. I could be wrong. If you guys want to fact check me on that, I do so. I'm not going to do it here on live, or else this video will be really long. But yeah, this name's still really clean. I think there's a lot of potential for this to trade 252.69 to 53.91 just from this earnings, or at least start to get to that, start to trend towards that. Maybe get up to this like 52 area and then start to trend. And I would be longing dips on that and kind of adding into those contracts. But this chart is super clean weekly. Obviously not the most ideal, and we saw this long upper wick kind of occur, but really that long upper wick was this candle and this candle, right? It really wasn't anything besides that. So it was kind of like a rejection candle on an attempted breakout, and then a long upper wick, or a lower wick, I'm sorry, coming from the buyers trying to defend the lows. So misleading weekly candle. Monthly, very interesting on the monthly as well. Just overall, this chart looks really interesting, right? Very interesting. It reminds me of Intel a little bit. So I'm just going to see how this one ends up playing out from earnings, and if I'm willing to add into the trend, or if I just need to cut those for a loss. Hell, maybe this even has a huge push and it marks all the way up to 55. I'm not saying that will happen, but if it does, I'm just going to close this and we can kind of move on. And then next, MU, right? Can't take our eyes off of this one. I've been talking about this one for so long. It would be completely, I think it'd be irresponsible to not talk about this one. Obviously, if you're a pattern trader, this does look like a head and shoulders, no denying that. But the volume here has been pretty low for the most part. We've seen this sell off on low volume and mark up on low volume, sell off on low volume, mark up on low volume. So it's just kind of like a random floated area, if you will. What really comes down to is if we can hold another higher low, right? We've had this double bottom look here off of the gap defense. Now we're right back above this old area that I wanted us to hold last time, right? Remember, it was this lower high, or this higher low here, this lower high range, kind of this rejection area, and then we finally broke out. I thought we'd launch off of this like tweezer top, or where we had these like two long wicks but closes above. We did not, and then it sold a little bit under, and now we have an opportunity, right, to just kind of get our low here and some kind of higher low off 108 to 105. Now, if it can pull back and hold 108, I might add a little bit more contracts into this one. Yeah, I mean, this is the one name that I really haven't trimmed. I closed a lot of crowd. I closed half of Intel, right? I closed all of my Tesla. So I benefited a lot off of this rally. The one that I haven't really benefited a ton off of is MU. And this name still has a ton of room to go, guys. Still has about 18 to 20 bucks. So this is still going to be a primary focus for me. Not the cleanest look on the daily, I'll say that, but on the weekly, this thing looks really good. Obviously, this is that higher low area. This is definitely that higher low. We had the double bottom down here. We had the higher lows kind of catch down here. And now it's just about getting a nice weekly close above, which we did, and then getting some kind of level here that maintains, whether it's 108 to 105. I just think it's that kind of like that broad zone where I think we can get that final higher low, or I was going to say that second higher low, and then really get that pop that we're looking for through these highs here. I think this is kind of the spot that we're looking, right? If I just mark this out in black. It's like 114, so we'll just round it up to like 115. If it can get through 115, I think this thing is good. I think it easily trends back up to 122.58, and then we'll really start to see the money pile up. But still good amount on this one. Just looking to add into this on a pullback, and that should be it in terms of new stuff or old stuff that I still have that I'm looking to roll into, or just kind of current positions. Now, let me edit real quick and jump into what I think that we could be taking here in the next couple days, couple weeks, names that I'm just waiting for it to pull back. All right, guys, this is not the top priority. It just happens to be at the top of the list, but it's Microsoft. Just want to jump into this one really quickly. Super simple setup here. If this can sell down and hold that earnings candle high, which is here, right? This is the day after earnings, technically on Thursday, but it is a footprint candle nonetheless. If it can just pull back, right, hold 416.16, I think this has potential for it to trend through this gap and fill the bearish peg. Very simple chart here. We just want to see a pullback, hold the 416, risk the bottom of that earnings candle low or that footprint candle low, and I think this can trade back to 432. So just something small that I wanted to have on everybody's list because it is like a bread and butter thing. This is a fundamental thing that I look at. Risk to reward's great. Win percentage on this is really good as well. Just a bread and butter setup. So I wanted to add this in there, even if it's not the top focus. Just keep it on your radar, guys. Now into this, right? I think everybody's looking at this one. Obviously, we partook, or was it partake? We partook in this just a little bit. Remember, our entry was somewhere in here. And I definitely was thinking about adding throughout this whole thing, especially like back here. I was thinking of adding into this peg where it sold into the peg just a little bit, but I was a little bit hesitant because if Kamala did win, I just felt like Elon and Tesla would receive so much backlash. Even Elon was scared that he was going to go to prison if they didn't win. It's just crazy. So there's a lot of stuff that was going through my head to where I was like, dude, if they do lose, I don't want to be in Tesla super heavy. But nonetheless, right, this had a great pop. I sold as it moved into this 289, 299 spot. Obviously, it gave us a little bit extra where it ended up pushing another $30 up to 230. But really, you can't chase something vertical like this. And you got to think this is still really early on. There's going to be a lot of beneficiaries of this new administration. Tesla is a big one. We'll talk about coin and Bitcoin and things like that. I think they're going to do fantastic as well. But this move is just getting started, in my opinion, and really you just have to be patient. I think this needs to pull back into this old high here, 299.29, which is that 300 level. It's that main lower high that everyone's kind of looking at up here, but a lot of people don't have the bottom or the top of that progression gap marked, which comes down, and I marked the whole gap out. That's what this little black box is, because it could seep a little bit further than people expect, but overall, I think it will hold the top of that, right? 289.52. So I have that whole area marked. And really, I guess the main point I'm trying to emphasize is I'm going to be buying dips on Tesla. Very simple. I'm a dip buyer here. You can't ignore this weekly bar. It literally, dude, this is beautiful. It broke through these weekly highs here. It pushed to the top of a major resistance and really cracked any downtrend line that you could possibly imagine, right? This thing is going crazy, and I really just want to be able to have this sell off into 299.29, maybe 289 at the worst, and I want to be able to absorb and buy those dips, right? And I would be looking, honestly, guys, I think this can go up to like 384. 384 would be a big spot, and then potentially 414 for a new all-time high. I really don't know how I want to go about this in terms of, do I want to swing for like next year? Do I want to go like 6 months out? Still haven't decided on the contracts, but I do want to let everybody know if this can pull back to 299 to 289, I will be buying dips that whole way, right? So that's just something I want to emphasize. I just think this thing is going to be insane over the next year. If it does end up kind of diving in a little bit lower than most people would expect, which usually happens with Tesla, you got to think that it's probably going to sell into this progression gap here, right? So if we mark that out, oh, it's already marked, never mind. So it would be 280 at the very worst. I think that's where my risk would be. So I might even be willing to add all the way down to 280. So if you guys look at this from a weekly perspective, I would give it a lot of grace. Let's say it hits here, I would be willing for it to come all the way down there, and maybe just add along the way if we start to trend up like that and start using each little level from that progression gap and that weekly high as like a stair step. I would be happy to add onto those. But yeah, this whole zone, 100% a dip buy for me, and it's probably going to be my top focus for the, I would say for next year. Honestly, this and Intel and MU are in some of the names that are going to benefit if Taiwan, their semiconductors start to get a ban or we're not using them. Intel, Lam Research, I think are going to be absolutely huge, but this is going to be one of those big names. Next is coin, right? Coin super crazy, obviously a massive move here, and we're at the highs, but you got to think, I think this Bitcoin move is just getting started. If it can just hold these weekly highs up here, I'm definitely interested. If we kind of mark this in green now, we clearly broke through on some of the highest volume we've seen in a long time. I would say some of the highest we've seen since this accumulation back here. Before this really started to pop out. But this thing looks good to mark up. If it can just kind of hold this general range from like 260, I want to say, just kind of right around that close on that weekly bar. So we can just say 257 to 260. Let's get this little mark level here as well, like 263, right? Just kind of like a rough range that we're looking at. Just need a somewhat of a pullback here, and if it can, I would be willing to long those dips, right? Same exact thing. I don't think that this sells all the way back down to like 198 to this 220 spot. I think this is going to be able to hold these highs and maintain it. Hell, I think we might even get a gap up here one more time going into tomorrow, which would be Monday, but still just have to be patient. I do think we could have a parabolic short setup on our hands with the broader market. I'll talk about that here shortly on SPY that we might be able to partake in, but I do think that's what sets up this pullback here, because we are very overextended and a lot of these names have gone completely vertical. So just looking for that pullback wherever we open up to, looking for that pullback. And then looking to long that, and ideally we go, up to the old highs, which are like around 283. I think this name can push 400, 350, 400 short term. But yeah, that's a story for another day. We got to get the entry first, so just waiting for that pullback. MSTR kind of ties into that. I know this is a long ways away, but I'm going to kill myself if I don't talk about this, guys, because we got that crazy monthly breakout back here from October, right? And we never retested that. We just kind of trended a little bit higher, but if we can somehow pull back to 200, whether they do another split and they start to sell off after that split or whatever happens, MSTR is absolutely a buy off 200. Just want to put that out there. I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon or it's going to even happen at all, right? I mean, that's why I'm looking at coin ahead of this. But if this can pull back to 200, I'm going to be adding so much money into this. It's not going to even be fucking funny. And I don't really cuss on here. So, yes, if MSTR can get to 200, absolutely a big add. Also, you have to look at Mara here, guys. This name is insane. Let's just talk about how the fact that this should have sold off from this weekly the weekly candle from last week, I believe it was, or 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, the 28th. This should have continued for a move further down, right? Usually, like a sweep candle over an internal high like that with a long upper wick usually results in a lower low on the weekly, or at least a close lower than the previous weekly close. And this didn't do that, right? This ended up almost entirely reversing it, and actually it engulfed the body itself. Didn't get over the candle high, right? But it obviously got above the spot we needed it to, which was at 1873. We closed above that internal high on the weekly. I say internal high because we're clearly trading within. Yeah, it's pretty obvious, guys. This is the external low. You can say that this would be the external up here, maybe up here, but clearly an internal range, right? And the fact that we closed above, right, we completely engulfed the body on something that should have reversed it or sent it further down. And you guys will take a look now. All right, we're clearly kind of holding above this spot now at 1873 with 2 inside bars against that massive candle there. So really this could be an opportunity if we open flat or just somehow pull back onto the spot again at 1873. Only issue is they have earnings, guys, so earnings might be a wrench in this. So I might not take it. It might just be coin and MSTR, but I did want to throw it on the radar just so that we can have something on our watch list that's fresh. But this name looks good for a potential pushback into this earnings, or not this earnings candle, I'm sorry, up into this progression gap around like 21 to 2156. Yeah, and maybe it goes higher. I'm not too sure. It is what it is, right? This chart does look good, but like I said, big wrench in the mix here with earnings coming up. Now I want to talk about Boeing. I've talked about this one on in terms of potentially adding over 159.70. I remember that news strike or that strike came out. And it opened up, it was supposed to open up around 159, but it obviously opened a little bit lower and then kind of sold off. But still really important because it's holding this footprint candle from Tuesday the 29th, right? Super important. We haven't really cracked underneath that, and this has that look of that 3 lower low accumulation that I always talk about. If I can just find the trend line. Where is it, guys? Oh, here it is. right? There we go. And this is kind of like a longer term thing that's been playing out, but we're seeing a lot of the biggest volume in a long, long time, guys, since the sell-off, even more than the sell-off that occurred, from all the stuff that's happened to them. We're seeing that volume come in, right, and it's now fighting and kind of holding and even trying to search for liquidity underneath that spot. So if this can hold 147.58 or open relatively close to that, what I might do is just take the calls here and then risk the low, right? And what I mean by that is just having my stop loss be right underneath 144.13 since this is the most recent low, and the candle that really searched for that liquidity under 147. And I might be willing to just add into that, risk that spot, and ideally this starts to make its move up to 159.70. 159.70 is really important. It was that old weekly low that provided a nice clean bounce before it had a lower high and sold off again. It also retested this multiple times. You guys can see the porcupine kind of look here that we had on the weekly with its rejections. So big spot for it to reclaim. And if it can reclaim that, guys, honestly, if we get some kind of pop here, I might even be considering a roll on this where I can get a new fresh position above 159.70 and then look for this to trend up into 167, which is this gap here. Let me mark this out real quick. Make it look a little bit cleaner, like 167, and then I think this can fill the entire gap at 173.74. So a big watch here. This is something that you kind of have to keep your eyes on because that volume is so high. So that means one campaign ended and another one's beginning, right? And this is stuff like key fundamental stuff that we look for in Wyckoff, right? And it also helps with that 3 lower low, the accumulations that are kind of occurring sporadically through each new low, and then the sell-offs happening on low vol. Obviously, we can see the volume spikes that are occurring with buys that are occurring in between. So just a very, very interesting and intriguing chart. I think it's something we should keep our eyes on. And that's really it, guys. That's all I wanted to cover. There's a lot of stuff happening in the market. I think we're almost to that point where it feels like you can just take calls and they will work, but it's important to have a system. It's important to have targets. It's important to have risk and trade around names that you're very familiar with. That's the big thing here. I'm so tempted to take GameStop, guys. I know a lot of people are going to ask me about this one, but it's just not something I have conviction in. I'm sorry. I think this name will squeeze, especially above 25. If it can just kind of break above this 25, like this chart's really nice, guys. I just have to point that out. Like we've talked about how I think it was back here where I said if it can hold this like 19 spot back here, and this is where I took shares, right? If you guys remember. If it can hold this 19 spot and just make higher lows against that, this thing's perfect. And of course, we ended up breaking out. We ended up filling the gap right here at like 23. It flagged off of that, broke above, based that, and then we had this huge launch pad. And then obviously we rejected this 25.02 level, which is that weekly high, but it closed very, very high against that. We had some really high volume as well. If this can just like high tight flag again and then pop and base, it's going to be very tempting to try to take this again because I do think this can squeeze through 25, or if it doesn't squeeze, it's going to be another slow grind up to that spot. And I think the best way to trade this honestly is shares. I just don't have the conviction, guys. I really don't, to like go through shit like this, right? Or like this was okay. Remember we were trading it in like June and stuff like that, but like this has been brutal for a lot of those guys. So I just think the market's going to get hot. The market's going to get very, very hot. Just, up into the 15th, I think we might just either sell down a little bit and give us that pullback, or, maybe we don't. Maybe we just keep going up. I have no clue. But there's a lot of charts that kind of go based off of for bullish continuation. If we don't see that pullback, or if we do see the pullback, there's a lot of opportunity as well. Just wanted to be on here, have everybody prepared. There's a lot of places that you can go. If you guys don't even want to follow this, that's totally fine. It's totally fine. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. But yeah, just be smart. Be smart with everything. Don't chase highs. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense, right? Buy low, sell high. Don't be buying high. And like I know MSTR, people were asking me this, and there's people that are actually buying the highs on this. And shit, it could work, right? I mean, there's no way of saying that this wouldn't work. It comes down to probability and it comes down to risk management. And this is really hard to manage risk appropriately. So just be smart with everything. Oh yeah, the SPY, I wanted to cover this really quickly, or else people are going to be upset at me. So we do have a parabolic short setup here, and I think this is what pulls the market back, if I'm being honest. Like where we had this kind of like this flag breakout. Obviously, it occurred on like the gap up. But if you think about it, we've had a gap up here, so 1. We had another gap up here, which is 2, and then we had another small kind of gap up from the close, or the close of the open. It was tiny, so we've had 3 gap ups. If we get another gap up again, guys, that will be 4 consecutive gap ups. I'm pretty sure, I don't look at RSI, but I imagine it's over like 80, 85. This name looks very, very similar to NVIDIA, right? And if we go back to NVIDIA, if you guys remember the parabolic short that I almost caught back here. I mean, it happened to this one. It happened to SMCI, but it was back here, and I had it marked, and I fucked up. Oh, it was. Where was it, guys? Oh, this is not good. I think it was right here. Oh, it is right here. Yeah, because you know why? Because I have a little thing here. I can see it. Oh, no. Where was it, guys? Does anyone know? Oh, it was right here. Right there, I found it. Okay, I was about to panic and be like, dude, I have to restart everything I just did. It was back here, where we had like these, we kind of sold down, and it just kept trending, right? This thing kept trending up and up and up. But then we got how many gap ups in a row? Where we had this day here, we had a gap up here, we had another gap up here, we had another gap up here. We just had 3 or 4 in a row, and it was insane. And then finally, it kind of caught on this day where it broke above the previous day's high. We ended up kind of selling. We had a lower high, and then it immediately flushed underneath the close, broke underneath this daily low, broke underneath this daily low, and then it filled the gap down below, right, which was this big one down here. It ultimately did it back here, but we ended up filling this gap here, right, kind of touched the daily spot. But really, really clean short. I think we moved like 12% in one day. Pretty close. It was like 11. And then the second day is what gave us that full move for that 12%, 13%. So I think we can have the same exact look right from these couple days here, right? Just this little spot that we have marked. Looks very, very similar to what we have currently on SPY. And I think we can easily sell down into these little dark pool prints that I had marked out. I've been talking about these for a couple days now. Big one here at 595.61, and then we have another big one here at 591, right? And then I think this is ultimately what sells us down to retest this old high breakout, which was back here at like 585, and then also defend the gap here. So I think we keep going up, but I do think that we can get that sell-off or that parabolic short. I don't have the one for 591, but yeah, you guys can clearly see big bids via dark pool prints here, 26 orders, the 3.5 million. It's not that much, but the sheer number of the sheer size is something to keep and look at, right? I think the other one, like I said, was 25, but it ended up closing at like 35 or something like that. So definitely something to keep your eyes on. It doesn't mean to go short on this one, but I do think that I can foresee this selling off, and that's what gets us that pullback entry on some of these names like Roku, Intel, Tesla, Coin, right? I think the broader market could see that pullback, and fingers crossed. That's what I'm hoping for. But that's really it, guys. That's all I want to cover. It's about 17 minutes. The other one was like 5, I think, or 6. It wasn't very long. So about 25 minutes. Shouldn't take you guys too long. I'm gonna jump out of here, guys. But yeah, let's keep our heads up. Let's try to stay, as motivated as possible, even during the times that are slow. I think things are gonna pick up very quickly, very, very quickly, and this is what I'm excited for. I don't know if you guys can hear it in my voice, but man, yeah, I think end of November should be maybe a little bit slower in terms of price action, or we get that pullback. But telling you guys, December, going into end of December, going into January, I think is going to be insane. And I'm going to be very, very aggressive with my positioning. I'm going to be very aggressive with, I'm probably going to take more than 3, 5. I've been taking like 3 to 4 different charts at a time. I might get up to like 6 to 8 where I have open positions across all of those. So I'm very excited. I'm ready to finally get this cash and put it to use. But this is it, man. This is it. I'm really excited. So I'll see you guys on Monday, bright and early. We don't have a lot in terms of like data, so it shouldn't be a ton of volatility this week. But yeah, I'm very excited. So I'll see you guys on Monday.